Welcome to the podcast FA5 FM, your daily dose of article for the article. Today we'll be looking at this Rappler article called Marcus and the Media, Platitudes, but what else again? This article mainly talks about the relationship between Bongbong Marcos administration and the press. A lot of a lot of people are going to this. We're very concerned with media suppression under Marcos Jr., especially considering the history with his father and the censorship that took place during the martial law. Thankfully, it hasn't been a complete return to those days, though it's not really that simple. It's still concerning how Marcus Jr. presents a lot of threat with his red tagging and limits on freedom of information. Like Marcus Jr. has campaigned against fake news, which is a little ironic because of his family has been accused of benefiting from this information campaign for years. This article even goes him from way back in his campaign, where he claims that his family were victims of disinformation. Makes you wonder, how sincere are these calls for a media and information literacy campaign? And it's not just talks either. There are some actions that definitely raise some eyebrows about press freedom. Remember the Freedom of Information (FOI) executive order from the previous administration? Well, this administration is gone and added even more restrictions, making it even harder to actually access information. We saw this in action when the Philippine Daily Inquirer put in a request for information about the cause of Marcus Jr.'s trip abroad, and they were denied. And that lack of transparency speaks volume. Kasi we would get contrasting statements, like open governance and stuff like that. To be fair, there has been some developments as well in the Philippines. Uh, we moved up from the World Press Freedom Index this year. Naging best natin siya since 2017. Anyway, it's good siguro on paper. Kasi the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, or the NUJP for short, says that press freedom in the country is still very fragile and our journalists are still facing threats. And may red tagging pa din eh. And it's just and there's just this general sense of unease. And the NUJP points out na there are still some attempts to paint independent and alternative medias as enemies of the state, which we tend to see a lot in the Duterte era. Maybe it's a little bit more subtle now, but it's still there. Beneath the surface, there are some worrying trends that we really can't just ignore. Pero speaking of worrying trends, let's talk about social media. This is where things get interesting. And honestly, a little concerning. Kasi the Rappler article talks about the rise of these vloggers and social media influencers and the power that they have to shape public's perception of things. Remember the talks about possibly accrediting vloggers to cover the events of the palace. It's a big issue. It's a big debate. Because people are concerned about the pro Marcus vloggers getting special access and being able to push their ideals even further. Now, that idea was ultimately shelved. Pero at least for now, but it really highlighted the happenings in the media landscape of these bloggers, especially ones with really strong political biases and their massive audiences. And they hold a lot of sway over public opinion. And it's something we really should be paying close attention to because it brings up these big questions about accountability and whether information is neutral in this new media age. And one of the things that are really concerning are how easily they can exploit the algorithm in social media too. Kasi we get stuck in these echo chambers na stuck ka talaga na it enforces your view and does nothing but strengthen your beliefs na which you already believed in. This article mentions the United Vloggers and Influencers of the Philippines, or UVIP for short. And it's made up of pro-Marcos believers. They ended up disbanding, mostly because of internal conflict. But that doesn't change the bigger picture here, which is that these hyper-partisan influencers have a lot of power to shape the information landscape. Their very existence raises question about potential media manipulation, which doesn't stop at just social media. It bleeds into the traditional media as well. Uh, this brings up Martin Romualdez, first cousin ni Marcos, who has been making big moves, really big moves in the media industry. His country, Prime Media, has been expanding rapidly in the past years, which started in 2018. Uh, Here's where things get interesting. Naalala niyo pa ba yung ABS-CBN? Yung media outlet known to many that were critical of Duterte's administration. Remember how they were controversially denied of franchise renewal? Well, after that happened, Romualdez Prime Media managed to secure a very valuable deal. They got control of 630, 630 KHZ frequency. It's not really just any frequency. This was ABS-CBN's DZMM's former radio station. This frequency is like gold. It has lower frequency, which means that it's much easier to connect to or masagap. And it doesn't really stop there. The Romualdez clan also owns the Manila Standard and the Journal newspaper, expanding their media empire even further. And this level of influence is very hard to ignore, especially when you consider how it might impact the Philippines, which makes this even more, let's see, interesting. Is that both Martin Romualdez and his wife, Yeda Marie Romualdez, were among the 70 Congress representatives who voted against ABS-CBN's franchise renewal. This this article raises valid concerns and could be strengthened by providing more context, data, and comparative analysis. It's essential for all the sectors to source of society to actively engage in protecting and promoting media freedom. This includes advocating for stronger legal frameworks, promoting media literacy, and demanding accountability from both the government and media institutions. Something for you to think about as you go along your day. How might the shift in media ownership, with Romualdez being more and more influential, impact the Philippines? Does it make things more fair, giving different viewpoints more chances to be heard? Or does it concentrate power, potentially restricting the flow of information? Bale, that's all the time we have for FA5 FM today. This article has been really interesting, and I hope you learned something new today. Till next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking tough questions.